I have the land use and zoning. I mapped the goals from all the chapters into what would be land use or zoning goals. So I wanted to go over them with the committee and make sure everyone was okay with zoning recommendations. So do I need can I just share the screen by clicking the share screen thing?
Yep, if you just click share screen, you should be all set. You got this.
Where's my...
It might give you a couple different options of document open. You should be able to just click.
It's so I put it on my desktop so it would be easy to find, and now I can't. It's not giving me that choice.
Did you open it on your computer, Mimi? So even if it's on your desktop, if it's not open, you won't see it as a share option.
What was that, Karen?
That if you have it actually open, if you open it on your desktop versus just having it on your desktop.
Oh, okay.
Then you'll see it as a share option.
Thank you.
Sure.
I know I've only been doing Zoom for 2 years.
Hey, that's okay.
Right? Yeah.
You'll get comfortable with it.
No, I doubt that. Oh, look at that.
Wonderful. Got it.
Perfect.
See, you did it.
Looks gorgeous. Nice,
It
nice.
took me all afternoon to do these stupid little arrows.
I love the arrows.
This is
They're very
great.
graphic, very beautiful.
And they're big enough that I can see them. That's good. I like that.
I put my glasses on, but I probably didn't even need that. You know, that's good.
So going through all the goals and recommendations from all the different chapters, there were like 4 basic things that kind of stood out and were touched upon in most all of the chapters. And the first being to enhance connectivity within the town. And the recommendations, these are all the recommendations from all the different chapters that hit that goal. A lot of it is sidewalks, trails, and bike paths or bike trails. So from all of these, land use and zoning would be to develop a plan to connect all parts of town with pedestrian, cycle, and trail access. And then the second part of that would be to construct or repair a sidewalk network throughout town, create bike trails and lanes, and connect sidewalks to the trail network.
Hey, Mimi,
Yes,
can I make a sidewalk suggestion?
certainly.
I don't know where the right place is, but one of the things that I found interesting is that as part of the Complete Streets project, we had our engineering consultants actually do a look at sidewalks in town. I don't know if folks have seen it, but they produced a very interesting map of existing sidewalks in various neighborhoods. And there was an old version of that they went around and updated, which was very helpful. And one of the things I've been interested in for a while is the concept of neighborhood parks. And there are some parcels of land in various subdivisions that are sort of left over that the town got or maybe purchased for other purposes that I think would be very interesting to put a picnic table and a small play structure in or whatever so people can walk to that in a neighborhood. And as I was looking at that, I found some places where there are neighborhoods, particularly in the south part of town, that have good sidewalk networks within the neighborhood. And down on Liberty Drive down there, for example, good sidewalks. And I can't remember the name of the road just to the west of that, but there's another neighborhood that also has good sidewalk networks, but the two neighborhoods aren't connected by a sidewalk. And so if you could actually build 500 feet of sidewalk down there, you could actually connect both neighborhoods. And I think, and there may be a trail opportunity in there too, between the neighborhoods. So you could double the amount of walking space and stroller pushing space or whatever that the neighborhoods could have with a very small investment in sidewalks. And I think there are some other places in town that are potential for the same kind of thing. So you don't have to, build sidewalks in the entire town to make it work. There are some critical places certainly, but I think there's some interesting things to think about as far as connecting existing sidewalk networks. So maybe some language in here that a network throughout town, parens, including connecting better connections of existing sidewalk networks to expand sidewalk area for neighborhoods or something like that. So I think that's a concept that's worth at least including on the list for consideration, because I would rather spend a limited amount of money doing some of those kind of things than building a new 3-mile sidewalk somewhere. Or we may not have enough money to build a 3-mile sidewalk, but we can connect a couple of places that would be good. And frankly, my bet is that we could get some state money, grant money to do those kind of things as well. It's a smaller project, but have a big impact. So
where is that report?
It was part of the Complete Streets project that the infamous Public Works Planning Board got, as a matter of fact. I'll send it to you. You can distribute it to the group if you'd like.
Well, that would be great. Yeah. And I know Liberty Estates, Nathan Stone is connected to Liberty Estates through a little like dirt path. And then Liberty Estates is connected to Woodbury Estates through a path through that unused soccer field there.
Yeah. So again, to me, I'm not so concerned about, paved sidewalk versus trails as you're suggesting here, but some concept, somebody taking a look at how we might connect neighborhoods better that way,
Right.
I think gives me a lot of bang for the buck in terms of opening up, linear feet of sidewalk to neighborhoods that probably get tired of walking around the same neighborhood on the same sidewalk all the time. So, and ultimately having a network, I think, as you're suggesting here, that you can go pretty much anywhere in town on a sidewalk would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Probably not in my lifetime, but if you don't have a plan, it's probably not going to happen.
Can I offer one suggestion or a comment for discussion about the bikes on trails? So I want to be careful, and I want to put this to the committee and how you want to separate it. So there are certain trails that you can't have bikes on. So any DCR land, you can't have bikes on that trail. So do we need to be that granular in our description of how we want to create bike trails? Like, is it bike trails on non-DCR land or just bike lanes? So I just want to ask the committee, should we be that detailed so that it can't be misconstrued that we're going to try to go and allow bikes where they're not allowed?
Might put a parenthetical in to say bike trails parens as possible or something like that.
Where appropriate or something?
Where possible.
And
Where allowed, how about where allowed instead of possible?
Okay.
Where they are allowed.
Yeah, I don't want to mislead folks into thinking that we can convert all of our trails into biking. I mean, I'm fully supportive of that, but we're just bound by DCR required law, the way that their land use policy is.
Good, and that parenthetical signals that we're aware of that.
Enough said.
But Kat, it's good to reference that explicitly, because there's a lot of people that say, why can't I just ride my bike on the trail? We don't have a control over it.
Thank you.
Excuse me, are any of these sidewalks considered safety issues?
The ones that we have now?
or the ones that you were proposing in the future to build. In other words, there is a couple of very dangerous situations around schools where there are no sidewalks, but children regularly walk along what are very narrow roads,
Sure.
barely 2 cars wide. And it seems to me that sidewalks in that context might make some sense,
Sure.
specifically to get the kids off the roads where possible.
And Bill, that was a priority factor for they did a sidewalk plan, I think, in 2015, and did ranking of important sidewalk projects. And I think that was one of the considerations there for prioritizing new sidewalk work was the foot traffic around schools particularly. And we've made some progress on that, but not lots, I think.
So I live on Deerfoot, and when I see school now in session with Flag Road, for example, sidewalks definitely would be helpful, and yet further narrow the streets. So it's challenging. I think it's a hard thing.
I'm
And
curious. Do sidewalks and footpaths have to equal the same thing? Can we, if you had, like, sidewalks have a certain, width that you have to have, but can you have a footpath that isn't under the same requirements that may fit better on a rural, very narrow road, that you could actually have a small path, but it's technically not a sidewalk, but it's a footpath? Would that allow us any more flexibility in creating some of this on those roads that don't really fit, you can't really fit a regulated
sidewalk? Because like Flag Road, for example, can't. And if everything happens as is projected to happen around the expansion of on Flag Road, then that'll be problematic.
Good question. Don't know.
The difficulty, Kat, is that as soon as let's take a public facility like a school, as soon as someone says, I'm disabled, and that footpath, even though it's used as a sidewalk, I don't have access to it for one reason or another. Maybe it's, I don't know. There are lots of reasons why a wheelchair bound or some other disabled individual wouldn't have access to it. And when that occurs, what happens is, or what could potentially happen, is some distraught parent can get in touch with either the federal government or the state government. They could come out there and they say, yes, that footpath actually functions as a sidewalk. You have to make that, we don't care how, but you have to make that accessible to disabled individuals. And suddenly it becomes a sidewalk again.
Okay. So there are no ADA approved footpaths.
No.
Okay.
Well, there are certainly ADA approved footpaths when it comes to footpaths through, let's say, areas where there are ecologically sensitive situations. And I think we've discussed those kinds of things before.
Yeah.
And so you can, with a proper posting, you can say, you can go as a disabled individual this far and no further because of these conditions. And those can be recognized. But a pure situation where somebody says, I'm just going to, because we don't have room for a sidewalk, I'm going to make a path where kids can run along and not get into traffic. As great as that sounds, it probably will be ultimately not legal.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Unless we find a spotted salamander along Flag Road.
That's always possible. There are lots of dead cats and other things along the road. You certainly can find those. Let me make another suggestion, and this goes back to something that I've thought about to some degree and suggested on occasion, is that some of these roads, narrow as they are and bordered as they are by fences and stone walls and ancient trees, those things could, if in fact there was some plan associated with it, those could be made into one-way streets with part of the road being turned into an appropriate ADA sidewalk. That gives the Board of Selectmen, in this particular case, the ability to control traffic in neighborhoods, and furthermore, make those neighborhoods inexpensively accessible to other portions of the city.
Mhm.
And there, I can see Sam right now sweating a little bit over there. It is a sensitive situation. I can understand that. There are, in the particular case with Flag Road, there are lawsuits now trying to prevent a building of a facility near Route 9. And the argument as part of that lawsuit is, we're trying to prevent this development because of all the kids that walk down Flag Road. It's very dangerous. No, it is. There's no question about it. On the other hand, that could be solved independently of what they wanted to do up there on Route 9. It could be solved with a series of one-way roads within this area over here. And the same, by the way, applies in many neighborhoods to the southern part of town, So one could make the town far more cohesive through sidewalks and a judicious use of one-way roads to accommodate those. Now, I know that's an ambitious concept, and I don't know how you put it in a plan like this for the next 10 years. But somehow, I strongly suspect, not in my lifetime, that will be a decision made by the communities in the town of Southborough to make it happen. Guarantee it.
And Bill, that idea has been at least raised at Board of Selectmen meeting. So no action that I'm aware of on that direction, but I think the board is aware of that possibility, not only for Flag Road, but other places where we're seeing issues with traffic and pedestrians and so on and so forth. So the concept is not foreign, but no actual plan proposed at this point that I'm aware of.
Is there anything that we can add to this concept of a cohesive community that would prompt the Board of Selectmen to further consider that issue?
It doesn't hurt to include the mention in here as a possibility. So I haven't figured out what prompts the Board of Selectmen yet, but I'm still working on that.
Isn't one of the issues in town with traffic that we have so few through streets and so many cul-de-sacs?
Yeah.
Well, there's no question. There's only a few ways to get from north to south and vice versa. And that goes back a couple of generations. I don't think we can solve that anymore unless we want to cut off Boston's water supply. But at the same time, while there are plenty of things we could do to improve that in terms of non-vehicular traffic, within the communities that are either on the north or south, one can join those committees or those communities through sidewalks and other things. There are, one could focus on that, or one could focus on trying to improve causeways and other things across reservoirs. I mean, I don't know.
But we could certainly, in this point here, I mean, we have another parenthetical or another statement that says, consider such options as taking, sidewalk challenge roadways and considering making them one way with additional space available for pedestrian traffic or something like that. I think it's worth keeping on the list for consideration.
Right. The only difficulty is it's not just a question of a little bit of room on the side of the road. To make an ADA compliant sidewalk, one has to have some sort of separation between the sidewalk and the road or traffic so that people aren't inadvertently run over as they walk along the sidewalk. So there's got to be a little buffer area. That's why one needs or could potentially use the 15 or so feet that are associated with the traffic in a two-way situation. If you wanted to make it a one-way road, you could probably gain 15 feet out of that sort of thing, counting the edge of the road that's already there. And that would be more than enough for a sidewalk.
Do you need a curb or grass area or something as a buffer?
Something like that, right. Now, I know what transpires is the fire department goes nuts, the police department goes nuts as soon as you start talking about one way. And those people certainly have to be involved in the discussion. But I mean, there's a tremendous possibility if one wants to knit neighborhoods together and encourage additional cohesiveness within the community. That would be one thing you might want to look into. It beats the crap out of killing women with baby carriages, I can assure you. And if one, as you can appreciate, Karen, if in fact one way is appropriate and limited access to that one-way road is made possible, then traffic associated with developments along Route 9 can be limited in terms of their ability to drive by, the school and other areas.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Bill. I mean, those of us who live on Deerfoot, we would be thrilled if a one-way policy was made on Flag Road towards Route 9, not towards Deerfoot, eliminating all the traffic that will come down Deerfoot, probably creating a risk for students, but also even like a street light, and additional traffic.
Absolutely. Lots of things that can be done. The irony is it's not just Flag. I mean, we talk about Flag and there's a very good reason for it. But if you do Flag, then you probably have to take a look at Lover's Lane and you have to take a look at other roads in the area to make sure that people can go from A to B somehow.
Yeah.
And all of that is possible with, let's say, trials. One could do a temporary structuring of one-way roads, make it work for 6 months or 12 months, as the case may be, then have the community come back together again in a town meeting and say, or a town sponsored meeting and say, does it work? What would you like to change? So I think there's a good way of making all of that happen.
I agree. Yeah.
I just hate to see the kids used as hostages so that,
I've already seen it. School started and, I drive up Flag Road and kids and, people in their baby carriages and people walking dogs or walking on either side. And all it takes is one of those landscaping trucks parked on the side and everything goes crazy.
I had to just the other day, I try to not to drive down there during when school lets out, but I unfortunately had to do it on this occasion. And I actually had to stop. I stopped to prevent trucks in back of me from proceeding further. So these kids could get by a series of trees on Flag Road that were just, very near the school. And it was, I was just really concerned that somebody was going to knock one of those kids down.
Me because I live here, but it is a bad situation. I think as we think about it, as it sort of extrapolates to what's important for the town, I think it's important to think about.
Right. And that, as I say, that's only one situation because it deals with safety, but there's also other ways of knitting various cul-de-sacs and communities, et cetera, on the south side of town together so that, in fact, you can walk, wheel the baby carriage, jog, as the case may be, visit people near you that you can actually see out of your backyard. You can actually get there without fear of being run down by a car.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us here on Deerfoot, it was huge, actually, when the crossing of Route 9 happened right after Lettucequama and into what is now like Tomaso Starbucks parking lot. So that crossing of Route 9 was a really big deal because that meant that my daughter, for example, could ride her bike to Tomaso when she worked at Tomaso. So I think that like those connections are important.
Right. I still would be concerned about her driving or cycling across that causeway. It's not very wide.
But at least it was a light, she could wait for the cross light and she could cross over the, through.
Absolutely. That solves the Route 9 problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right.
Can I just
Next.
ask?
Sorry, Mimi. Go ahead.
Just one comment. Are these, this is so interesting. I'm so happy to join you guys. Are these prioritized in any way? So as somebody who lives on Flag Road, and I watched in the last couple of days, like 20 to 40 students walking down, the road, it occurred to me that, the schools in the other part of town don't have the same problem, I don't think, but I don't live over there. But the roads are much wider. So can we somehow prioritize that these accommodations can be made to roads specifically where children are walking to and from school as sort of a priority? Now, I
Sam,
agree with you, it goes everywhere. It's Lover's Lane and up Bantry, and kids are walking everywhere, but it is most really perilous by the school.
I agree, Deborah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sam, did that study you're referring to, was that part of that study? Did it deal with subjects that we're talking about here
I
in
think
terms
so.
of sidewalks?
It's been a while since I've read. I'll be happy to send both the sidewalk report and the map to Mimi, and she can distribute it to the committee.
Yeah, thank you. though. I'd be interested. in
I think it would not be inappropriate for this committee to make a suggestion about prioritization. Say top priorities should be focused on foot traffic around schools or something like that.
Like this,
Mhm.
especially near schools.
Yeah,
That would be good.
Yeah. For sure.
That focuses, I think, first on the safety issue and then secondly on the cohesiveness issue that we discussed.
yeah, good. And the thing that worries me most is very small children riding bikes, sort of wobbling
Yes,
along the road, and
Mhm.
just afraid that they'll fall over at some point right in front of the traffic, which is crazy.
Mm. Well, it's also the curves on Flag, can make it so that the traffic doesn't even see that small
Right.
child riding a bike, Mm.
And I must say, maybe I've forgotten how I was when I was a child, but I'm absolutely amazed that people can walk along that road. Young people can walk along that road, either facing backwards, while communicating with their friends, or using cell phones or some other thing. In other words, I think there's not only the danger, but there's an attention issue, which is increasing the danger.
Mm.
And if you're driving along there, hell-bent for election, trying to leave work and get home, somebody's going to get nailed, sure as heck.
Yeah. We've been talking about this, for the last year and a half or so that we work on this master plan. This isn't new. And yet I think as we finalize the plan, important to create those prioritizations, as you mentioned, Deborah.
Yeah, I think sidewalks are huge. They come up in almost every single chapter, and they come up, at the planning board. They were recently discussed at the Board of Selectmen for Oak Street. It's just over and over again. I mean, we were this little rural farm town where people, had herded their cows down the street. And we need sidewalks because there were no people really.
I wish we had those
And
cows.
we've grown so much, and like the new subdivisions have sidewalks, but the main, roads that were in existence don't, and they're very narrow.
And these roads were laid out in the 17th century. So, it's not surprising they didn't anticipate automobiles that were 10 feet wide traveling at 30 or 40 miles an hour, plus kids on bicycles. Never even thought of them.
Right.
And they were laid out by cows too.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever seemed easy. Yeah.
So the next theme was a community gathering space, either a community center or community green spaces, or like pocket parks that Sam, you were referring to earlier. And those come from several goals through different chapters talking about bringing the community together in a gathering space. Anything on that? Should I specifically mention a pool, Tom?
Nothing brings a community better together than swimming in a pool.
Yeah.
During COVID, yep.
There we go.
You hold your breath underneath the water. You're not spreading it.
I'm just gossiping.
I gasped when I hit the surface. Sam, is there on the Woodward School? Is that? I don't know how to address. I don't know how we can address that in this particular plan, since it is not yet a done deal or even a formal consideration. But that might be an area where there can be developed community spaces, because there's ample opportunity to do that in that area, I would think.
Yep. Yeah, I think, though, you're exactly right. I think it's not, I guess, the right thing to give too much press to that at this point, because it's still in very preliminary stages, and we don't want to put any pressure on one side or another on that particular issue. So I think it's a very interesting concept, and how that turns out could, as you suggest, have certainly an impact on sidewalks and also community gathering space as well.
Well, we have a lot of community buildings in that general area of town.
Sure.
I'm wondering, there has always been, I think, a focus on the villages. And that's great. But the villages in and of themselves, having parks and other recreational activities for their purposes, those, because of our inability to kind of knit the villages together appropriately on occasion, means that other parts of town don't have access to that sort of thing, either as for recreation purposes or certainly for cultural purposes.
Right.
The only place we have right now for cultural purposes that I'm aware of happens to be the schoolyard over near the Trotter area over there. Mm-hmm. And that area where the recreation department occasionally holds concerts in the summertime.
Right. Yep.
It would be nice to have something more formal than that, because then it won't be just a couple of guys plucking banjos up there. One could have all sorts of additional cultural and other things going on. Yep. But it seems to me difficult to do that in each one of the individual villages, and therefore a focus on a central area might make some sense and be more economical for the community.
Yep.
Bring us
on my list for a while, sure.
Okay, anything else on that? And the next was create strategies to offer more diversity in housing. And there are many recommendations, mostly from the housing chapter, but also from other chapters on creating more diverse housing stock. So some of the recommendations for the zoning chapter would be to amend the multi-family for the elderly section of the zoning bylaw to incorporate affordability requirements. Amend the zoning bylaw to allow accessory apartments by right, allow duplexes by special permit, amend the zoning bylaw to allow mixed-use buildings and multifamily housing in the downtown. Create design guidelines for use by proponents submitting proposals for the downtown, and amend the zoning bylaw to allow mixed-use buildings. Which I want the committee's input on all of them, but the mixed-use buildings on Route 9, I particularly wanted to ask, there are some people think that, or some theories have thought that Route 9 should, because we have so little land in this town that's dedicated to commercial development, that there should not be any residential use of Route 9. And then the other thought is that mixed use should be allowed on Route 9. So I just wondered what the committee thought about that.
I'm curious how much of it is empty right now for commercial.
Oh, I'm sure a lot.
That therein lies the answer for me. if there's a lot of empty commercial space, and especially with the way offices are going and work environments are, the hybrid approach, I would say there's an opportunity to develop some of that into multi-use without jeopardizing and actually encouraging.
There's been some conversation around finding a location for a 40B project on that. Again, it would be helpful in terms of not only housing stock, but 40B threshold. And one of the things that's in my section in terms of revenue for the town is to find ways to improve commercial revenue sources, property tax and inventory tax, and for the commercial activities. And Route 9 is the place to focus on that. So it seems to me that's an appropriate push for Route 9. I don't think that's inconsistent with housing along there, particularly things like Madison Place kind of project.
And it's not changing everything. It's just amend the zoning bylaw to allow. If the right situation arises, it will allow a mixed use.
Yep.
Especially in the day and age where people don't want to commute anymore, and a lot of people in the city, if they're going to work out here, they don't want to have to. We haven't solved the commute issue. You can use the train out here, but you can't get from the train to your office.
I don't know who's making the background noise, but I'm sorry to interrupt you, Kat, but I get a lot of, I don't, let me know if it's just my computer, but I have a lot of
I
static.
hear it too.
No, there's a fair amount of feedback. Maybe if everybody mutes just the person who's talking.
I guess nobody can talk if everybody's muted. Always a downside to every good idea.
Everybody except Kat.
Keep the noise down there, Tom.
So, I mean, in my mind, I think
This is Julie. Can you hear me? I may have been making the static up in the car. This is causing background noise.
Yeah, I think it's you. So sorry.
Yeah, I think perhaps. Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes the person who's
I'll
running
stay
the
on mute and try. I have a
meeting-
comment, but I don't want to cause trouble, so I'll go on mute and try again in a couple minutes.
Right.
Sorry, I just pick up my daughter.
The challenges of working on Zoom.
Guilty.
A quick question. Does increasing diversity mean increasing density?
It might.
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but it could.
Right.
It might. Is that I guess, is increasing density, does that have the same value as increasing diversity? In other words, should one talk about increasing diversity, but in the context, causing development not to be as dense as it might be if, in fact, one put up 5-story apartment buildings?
I think that, if you're going to increase your diversity, you may sort of increase density as kind of a symptom. I don't know, for lack of a better word of that. For example, if you built, large scale home and created 4 units of living space in it, but it was still occupied a similar lot to kind of keep in character with the rest of the community, you would be increasing your density, in fact, but you wouldn't be doing it in a visual way, but you would have 4 units in that same size home for rentals, for example, versus just one single family home.
Byproduct, that might be a good word.
Okay. I know there used to be a discussion many years ago about developing things like condos, et cetera, but siting them on the land so that, in fact, whatever open space you had was more preserved as open space, with only a portion of it being the condo, rather than plopping the building right in the middle of an open space, for example. And I don't think there's anything in our zoning bylaws that talk about that sort of thing as an objective. As a result, what we tend to get is because it's simply easier. They get an acre of land and they drop a 5,000 square foot house in the middle of it. And that doesn't address diversity, and it certainly doesn't address the issues of conservation and open space. But, there's a tax implication for it, I guess.
Well, a couple of things. So that cluster type zoning that you're referring to, Bill, that increases density because you have all your housing in a smaller area. So,
yes, Mimi, I agree, but it increases density in a very specific way.
right.
In other words, there may be an issue. It says we want to increase the ability to have, diversity, but we don't want to have density increased in an abnormal or what we would consider an abnormal or undesirable fashion. Am I making any sense?
I understand what you're saying, but that's hard to translate into a zoning law. Like undesirable is very subjective.
Well, one talks about when there is an open space issue associated with developments. And we've gotten into the situation where people are measuring, the stripes between the two pieces of concrete in the driveway, the place where you put the garbage can, all of that, all of those little things the lawyers put into something called open space. And it may add up. The individual little teeny chunks of property may add up as open space, but it certainly isn't conducive for conservation, number one. And visually, it certainly doesn't do anything to promote the concept that you're living in I won't call it a rural community, but a community that values open space, for example. It looks like a bunch of houses.
From an open space perspective, of course. But I think about at this stage in our crafting our master plan, how do we incorporate that or not incorporate that to move this forward to finalize the plan? But knowing that I fully support what you're saying, that we need to preserve open space.
It's on you, Mimi.
So is your recommendation, Bill, that we add the creation of a open space residential design bylaw to the zoning code?
Well, I would certainly agree with that. I don't want to, however, dance all over this concept of a more diverse way of involving people or drawing people into the community. It just occurs to me that if, in fact, you want diversity, you also have to have a diversity in housing stock. And if you want a diversity in housing stock, that takes into account, let's say, the rising price of housing and the inability of people to pay for it. Like we have some, I think, community employees who can't afford to live in town. If, in fact, you wanted to have a lower priced housing stock, it generally implies density. If it implies density, however, we don't necessarily want to cause that density to jump all over this concept of open space and conservation. So it is a whole train of concepts that's why I'm not on the planning board or anywhere close to it. But it's a complex issue that I don't know if we can express in a 10-year plan, but I'm of the opinion that we should try. How does that sound?
Yeah, Bill, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. It's hard to know how best to incorporate that now at this stage in the finalization of the plan. What do you all think?
So a couple of things. We have a major residential development bylaw that's on the books, and it's supposed to be kind of like cluster zoning because it allows you to have decrease lot sizes and setbacks and frontage in exchange for open space. But if, unfortunately, what has happened is that developers don't really build it as a cluster. They build huge homes and they don't really take advantage of the smaller lots and the smaller frontage. So I don't know if there's some way to tweak that it encourages the building of smaller units and more open space. I don't know.
And one of the things we've talked about in the Open Space Preservation Commission is not allowing the percentage that needs to be converted to space the lot, but having it be more significant. That's already a part of the guidelines.
Having trouble hearing you, Karen.
Yeah.
Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was just saying that one of the things we've talked about in the Open Space Preservation Commission is the fact that when builders are building on lots, they have to preserve a certain percentage of their lot to open space. And some builders have chosen to have it be a small perimeter around the lot, which isn't really meaningful open space. And so one of the things we've been working towards is then preserving a portion of the building site, a small perimeter for open space.
Mimi, the best I could suggest is, I mean, it's clear that I think we're not getting achieving the results in the plan, and I think you would agree in that particular plan that you were just referring to. And I'm wondering if, in fact, that we should, as a committee, suggest that be revisited with certain priorities in mind and potentially revised, if there's a way to do it.
Sure. And also, I think what Karen was referring to is that our subdivision rules and regulations require 10% open space, but they require 10% per each lot. So that's why you get these little narrow strips. So perhaps updating those subdivision rules and regulations and requiring 10%, but in a more cohesive,
contiguous part.
I agree.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Well,
Yeah,
I was
you're
just,
exactly right.
yeah. I think it's challenging though, even that language, because the tiny strip is contiguous. So, I think that language, when it does get looked at, is definitely going to need a quite savvy and critical eye, because, it's hard, I think, for developers to see value in really maintaining a large swath of open space if they can put another house there.
Right, but you see, the difficulty is that the open space has to have an objective. It's not just a strip of land. It has to have some objective, whether it's a visual objective for the community or a conservation objective. In other words, does it constitute an addition to conservation space? And if it doesn't do either one of those, then, as I have seen plenty of lawyers do in the meetings I've attended, they'll get every little teeny square inch of space, they'll add it up, and they'll try to call it open space. And it is by no means a definition of open space.
I agree.
So something has to be done I think I would like to see something done to address that. We probably are not going to come up with a solution here, but we could state an objective which said in 10 years, somebody should take a look at this and see if there's something that can be done.
Yeah, I fully support that, Bill. I really appreciate your advocacy here.
And Bill, there is actually a way to measure that in terms of consolidated open space and get rid of those small pieces. As a matter of fact, there are some places that use a concept called area to perimeter ratio that is a little mathematical, but it actually discourages tiny spaces and encourages larger pieces of open space. We haven't done that, but I think that all falls within what you're suggesting here and what Mimi's typing in terms of reviewing what we have to see if there are better ways of getting a more usable product here.
Right, and there's a limited amount of large open space to do development in town these days. So anything that can be done with specifically with smaller parcels to keep them contiguous or in some sense an open space concept going there makes a great deal of sense, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say, I think that captures it, Mimi. Smaller dwellings, units. To encourage smaller dwelling units. Because there's a couple of things. You got affordable, which is 40B, but you have, people that still making a decent wage that still want to buy a house in town. And I think we have very small inventory around that. So the smaller dwelling units can help that.
Is everyone okay with the other suggestions, the over 55 housing incorporate affordability requirements, which I think was the original intention of the bylaw, but it
Isn't the new 55, isn't 65 the new 55 or whatever the opposite? Isn't 65 the new 55?
I'm very offended by the fact that it's called multifamily housing for the elderly and it's over 55.
If you're taking a look at that section, there's also a provision in there in terms of the number of people that can live in the multifamily and in the housing for the elderly within each unit. I think there's a 2-person cap, which can be challenging sometimes. I think if there needs to be a caregiver or that kind of thing. So I know that we've gotten a few calls about that in the office before. So just it's kind of a nitnoid thing, but if you're going to look at it anyway, you might as well take a look at that as well.
So, Sarah, you're thinking you have that multi-generational house, but you also have a full-time live-in caregiver that's not potentially not blood related.
Right, exactly. So we've come across that a little bit, and I think that in those smaller units, it does potentially make sense to have a resident cap in terms of the number of people, but I think probably a minimum of 3 would probably make sense.
Do you just think changing the minimum number of occupants to 3 would cover that, or does it need more explanation?
No, it probably doesn't need much more explanation than that. And you're right, maximum, not minimum.
So, Sarah, right now it says 2.
Right now it says 2, yeah, and I
Okay.
don't have the code open in front of me, but I just know that that's something that's come up a couple of times.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you're right on that.
Yeah.
And one person has to be elderly, 55.
Right.
Well.
And
That's a majority of us.
Well.
I speak for myself only.
And everybody okay with accessory apartments by right? Right now, it's a
Yes.
special permit through the zoning board. And allow duplexes by special permit. Right now, you can only convert a single family home that's in existence for 2 years or more to a duplex.
Yeah, special, I'm okay with the special, as long as there's a method or a way to get there instead of a door being closed. So what you're
Yeah.
saying is a single family house that's 2 years old could be turned into a duplex?
Right now it can, yeah,
So my house could be turned into a duplex if I wanted to?
sure.
I didn't know that.
But you can't,
But you
Build
can't
a
just build a
duplex.
duplex.
yeah,
No, I could put a kitchen on the second
Right.
floor. Yeah.
right. In an existing home that's been
Right, you could
in
retrofit.
existence 2 years or more, you can convert it to a duplex.
Hmm.
But allowing duplexes by special permit would enable you to build duplexes.
Right. I think the original thing about the duplexes was these existing larger homes. I think we're talking specifically around Parkerville. That, it would be really great if we can actually make it into a two-family, a duplex, and make one affordable or something like that. So I think this goes above and beyond, I think, the initial intent of that, which is fine. I like going above and beyond.
So is everyone okay with that recommendation?
I am.
I'm okay with it.
Okay. All right, then. The third is to strengthen sustainability of local businesses, commercial districts, and villages. So one of the things to increase the use intensity would be to allow for 4-story buildings on Route 9. Currently, they're capped at 3 stories.
That's all good and well, but until there's the SOAR, on Route 9, isn't a lot of these things a moot point?
So does that prohibit development on Route 9?
Waste, yes. Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, wastewater does, but again, there's technology now that didn't exist 10, 15 years ago for wastewater treatment. So it is more economical now. Whether that's sufficiently economical to support a 4-story building, I'm not an engineer, I don't know, but at least we're closer to that.
I'm okay by raising it to 4-story. I'm just saying, without addressing those needs or investing in something like that, or part of building anything to go 4 stories, maybe that's an economic advantage so that it is to a builder profitable to do 4 stories. So I'm fine with that.
And we could certainly, that's a 4-mile stretch along Route 9. And we could certainly actually, maybe use something like federal infrastructure money to build a wastewater capacity in town. It turns out it is very unlikely that we can connect Route 9 to MWRA sewer. There are some difficulties with that getting through Framingham and into the MWRA system, but we'd have to do a local wastewater plant. But again, there may be federal money to do that, who knows? But that's at least something that's worth thinking about there, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last general goal is establish strategies for energy conservation, carbon footprint reduction, and climate change resiliency. So from that, I have create a tree canopy bylaw, review the stormwater and erosion bylaw and determine if an update is advisable. Amend the site plan approval bylaw to require installation of electric charging stations. Create and implement a native tree planting program and identify roads in towns that should be given the scenic roads status and have them approved by town meeting.
I totally agree with those. I mean, especially the one around create and implement a native tree planting program. That's been a big discussion around the Open Space Preservation Commission.
So we're now a tree city and we're trying to, thank you, Sarah. So we're trying to codify the rules and the requirements around tree removal. So hopefully trees won't disappear without hearings. But we should also be working on planting trees, which I don't think has been on the radar.
Mimi, does the planning board talked about additional roads for scenic road category? I mean, I actually took a look at that as part of the tree policy because scenic road trees are protected differently. And I didn't see many that seem to me to qualify as a scenic road that aren't already scenic road. I think there are 18 road segments in town that way. Does the planning board have any ideas, proposals for additional roads that might be considered as a scenic road?
I don't think so, but I have some ideas.
Oh, okay.
I mean, there's some segments of roads that I think the whole road should be.
Okay. It's certainly worth talking about then.
I think it's definitely worth talking about. I think it's also worth really clearly defining which roads and which road sections are currently approved as scenic roads. Because, you know, when I first started, there was some discussion about all the town roads are scenic roads, and then they've come to find out there isn't, and they're not. And you know, it's kind of one warrant article that talks about them, and some of the kind of delineations are just a little bit vague, you know. So one of the things you might want to start off with is just to define and have a consensus with all the boards where the scenic roads do begin and end, and where those, especially particular pieces of roads, begin and end, and then maybe work back from there to see if perhaps the whole road should be approved.
Yeah, I think that is fairly clear, Sarah. There were 2 town meeting warrant articles a long time ago that had that list, and there may be a little bit of fuzziness around a couple of them, but I think most of them are actually fairly well specified. And you're right, at one point, I don't know, 5 years ago or so, town council opined that all roads in town were scenic roads, which turned out not to be the case. So
Yeah, I had thought that all roads except for the numbered roads were scenic roads.
yeah.
I think that originally the Warren article was to designate all roads except for the numbered roads.
It
scenic roads.
was,
And it got
and then it
amended
got-
on town meeting floor, yeah.
right.
Amended, so. But anyway, good concept, and we ought to get the right list out there, and if we need to add to it.
Well, and even a map. I love maps, getting all sorts of in trouble with maps. But you know, a map might be a good visual.
Sure.
We can overlay the scenic road map on the sidewalk map.
And what we need to do is declare scenic sidewalks.
So that's all I have. Sam, do you have anything you want to share? So how do I unshare now? Share.
There should be the button down
There should be a
below.
button that says stop sharing at the very top middle of your screen.
No, you're in Excel share now. We're talking about.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
The bright red thing right in front of my face.
There you go. Perfect.
Can I ask a question about the electric plugins? You guys have done so much work on this. Is there any thought about also down on Route 9 where we have, you know, more of our, you know, commercial aspects of the town and requiring some portion of any new parking area, for example, to be electric plug-in. It may not meet that specific
Brilliant.
like objective, but why not? If there's a new business, a new parking, new owner, maybe 10% of their lot has to be electric plug-in or something like that.
Yeah, well, so if it was a new parking lot over 5 spaces, then it would kick site plan review, and then adding that to the site plan. I don't know what other mechanism you could require people to install charging stations.
Zoning bylaw update.
To have a specific zoning
Yeah,
electric charging
regulations
station
for-
bylaw?
For certain, types of developments or whatever, maybe, yeah.
Well, or if it changes hands, right, you can't go back and make somebody install that, but maybe if it's coming to the zoning board for new use,
Yeah,
right? So zoning bylaw, yeah.
Or site plan bylaw.
well, so that was my recommendation to amend the site plan bylaw
Yeah.
to require electric charging stations. But if there's some other mechanism I should add, I will do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, encouraging the town to actually support that. I keep reading from a lot of different sources about grant money for electric charging stations. And sure seems to me a lot of people are doing that out there. And something, like the townhouse, maybe at some of the schools, for example, certainly the T station area would be a natural place to do that. And part of the challenge is you get the grant to put the station in, but then who pays for the electricity going forward? But I'm sure you could work a deal where somebody has to insert their credit card to pay for the electricity for the charging.
Yeah, I don't have an electric car, so I've never charged, but they're not like parking meters that you put money in?
Some
They
places,
are,
I think
they are like pocket meters. Some are free, very few. And a lot of them are like a pocket meter. You pay how much you charge.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it is like a business, like an ATM at a
Is it
variety
expensive?
store.
Does anyone know? Just curious.
What was that?
Is
Kat?
it expensive? Do you know what it goes?
No, I don't.
Just curious.
So my husband has an electric car. It's like $2 a day to charge your car overnight. So I don't know what
From
that
your own home. It's
Yes.
cheaper than gasoline. There's no
That's the
question
gallon
about
of
that.
gas. Yeah.
All right, Sam, do you want to share anything with us for all your labor on your chapter?
My recent frantic labor. I'm happy to talk through. I don't think it's all that productive to go through, line by line, but happy to talk through some of the concepts in terms of what I've tried to build in here. It's different from the previous version. So let me just sort of talk through some of that stuff at a high level. One of the issues for me is that the organization is a little different now than it was in 2008. So things are moving around in some of the different places. But in terms of chapter public services, resiliency, and schools is the concept here. And one of the key things is last time the schools were viewed as basically facilities, and that's it. And I think one of the real opportunities here is to update that to talk about the educational purposes, social purposes, et cetera. And I think I've made this pitch before this group, but I guess I see the schools as a long-term integrating factor for the community in terms of sense of community, cohesiveness, et cetera, and lifelong education, starting with pre-K and extending to daycare. Some of the federal programs that are pending here may provide some funding for that stuff. And then on the other end, going into lifelong learning programs that today carried out more by senior center, library kind of programs. But I think there's a real opportunity to view schools in a much more comprehensive way than simply buildings, which is sort of what the old version did. So that's one significant change. And I still actually am working to catch up with Katura Martin to wire in some of the strategic planning work that the schools have done. They've obviously been very busy the last year here with the COVID situation, so I've not had a chance to actually spend much time with it. We've talked about it a few times, but that's still a gap that I need to fill in here. Another key update for me is technology, which last time around was a little bit of stuff about number of computers and servers and so forth. And I think the new Municipal Technology Committee has done a great job with things like longer term planning. The community survey that they recently started, I think, is a great tool going forward. So we've now got an electronic basis to survey a wide variety of community preferences on things that I think will be very important going forward. And they have been pushing to do a variety of things to get us off of owning physical equipment like servers and so forth, and doing things like cloud storage, which most commercial organizations are heavily invested in now. And so we're in the process of, I think, a major shift in terms of our view of technology, basic infrastructure as well as technology services. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for upside there. So for me, at least, a much larger, stronger push to highlight those kind of concepts, I think is very important. We've got an interesting list of new things that we've done in the last 10 years or so since the last plan. So I think, usually we went through some of the 200 recommendations and implementation steps or whatever. And, there wasn't a huge number of things, but there were some important things that are done. So we've updated that. I think that's something that folks will find interesting. A lot of stuff in the old plan I thought of as sort of filler, describing sort of general things. Here's what's going on in the state kind of stuff, which I think of as less relevant to us at this point. And that's not surprising, because the consultants who wrote the plan last time, I didn't think were as up to speed on Southborough stuff as much as pulling their stuff off the shelf in terms of generalized state kind of information context that is useful, but again, not as relevant for the things that we're doing locally here. So I've redlined a lot of that stuff, taken a lot of that stuff out, and updating things like what's going on with facilities, new public safety complex, some of the renovation work going on with the townhouse and the library and so forth, are things that I think are worth noting in here. Talking about, let's see, the water supply stuff I thought was about 3 times longer than it needed to be, so I've cut a lot of that stuff out, which is interesting, but sort of context, if you will. Recreation stuff that used to be in this piece is now in the open space and recreation chapter, so that's going to be different. Municipal finance updated a lot of the data. We need to update the data in that one. New numbers, but not as much verbiage, because again, I don't think that there's great value in talking about sort of overall state trends in these things, which are context for us, but not something that I think we need to spend a lot of time thinking about. And some new tables, updated tables. Mimi, actually, do we have new tables for all of the tables in the old ones now? I don't remember seeing those, but they may be out there. I know we were having consultants update, MAPC or others updating some of the tables that we had in the last.
Yeah, so Sarah had asked for tables that we tried to incorporate into the open space rec plan, for example. But I don't know if that related to your stuff, Sam.
Yeah, I put in a list of tables I would be interested in seeing, but I don't remember actually communication that had been done. I think Sarah was working on it.
It was right after our last meeting that Sarah sent out this email that had all the new tables.
Oh,
and
okay.
Probably
I can resend it to you, Sam.
I can find it. I've got it here somewhere here. So all the tables that I had asked for are now been updated.
They should be, but if there are any outstanding tables, just let me know.
Okay.
And actually this goes for everybody. We are gonna try to engage a consultant one more time to get any last data sets that need to be covered. So if you do have any needs, let me know.
Okay, I'm assuming they're there. I just, again, was looking recently here and I didn't see them, but
So the only thing that we don't have yet, Sarah, is the information that would have come from the most recent census. Is that true?
Correct. Yep. You know, in kind of looking at what we requested and what we received, most everything was completed except for many of the tables that were associated with the housing section, actually, because those are specifically tied to the census data. But again, if there's anything else that folks are realizing that they need, please let me know.
okay. So the biggest open spot in my piece is the schools at this point. I will get after Couture again, see if I can connect with her and fill in some of those blanks. But, you know, again, I shipped it to, I guess, Mimi and Judith today, and I still need to do some filling in, and I have actually not done a full read for consistency yet. I'll try to do that again, but I was trying to get through the whole thing as a first step, at least, which I've had great difficulty with so far, but finally got a chance recently to spend some concentrated time on it. So apologies for the lateness, but making progress, I think. So that's it. Any questions or concerns about those comments or things that I've omitted that people were expecting to see in this particular piece?
Nope. Not for me. Thank you, Sam.
That's great, Sam. Thank you.
So the next thing I wanted to discuss is how we get this all put together. Like, should we just, all of us just read all the chapters and come to the next meeting with comments, or how do we do this?
Well, before recently, I thought Sarah was going to do all that stuff. So unfortunately,
The nerve of her.
my plan has been totally torpedoed here. My devious plan has been subverted, so
That's right.
we have a problem. Judith has done wonderful work on that so far as well. So
Sure has. Yeah.
given that she's not here this evening, maybe we could
In the
deputize
UK.
her.
Assignment.
She escaped the country to get out of this meeting.
You did.
We-
And actually, I sent her a message because I wanted to find out the most recent version of our chapter that I could edit. And she wrote back and said, "Oh, I'm in the UK. I'm not coming to the
Well,
meeting."
that's no excuse. The UK has internet. Come on. So we can elect her chair and chief scribe and author. And
Oh, and that was another thing. We'll need to, well, I think, and Judith thinks, and leave it up to the committee to see if you agree that we will need to hire someone to do the final put together and the final formatting and to get the finished product.
Mhm.
Oh, that'd be great.
that's money well spent, I think, if we can
Yeah.
find the money to do that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mimi, related to that, before I forget it, do we want to think about doing some sort of an update? Should we have a special town meeting November 1st, which is the current plan? Maybe a brief update on the master plan to alert town meeting that it is working and on the way, and stay tuned kind of thing. I don't think it hurts to keep people's awareness up a little bit as we can.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And
So,
hopefully,
again,
I don't know if we'll have a draft by then, but I think we'll be,
don't even need a draft. I mean, the moderator was very limited in terms of reports that he allowed at the last town meeting. I think this one is supposed to be indoors and limited agenda, but I got to believe that if you ask for 5 minutes to do an update on the master plan, he would maybe be.
so do you think like a PowerPoint thing or just?
Not necessarily, maybe even 3 slides or something, but at least, 5 minutes, 3 minutes worth of, this is what's happening. We're eager to get this wrapped up. It's on the way, many hearings for it, public session, blah, blah, blah. reinforce public input, even though I'm sure whatever happens, we will have 1,000 people say, I never knew anything about this. And how
Yeah,
could
well,
how
that's
could you do
the
this
way it
without
goes.
consulting me? That's right. That's guaranteed. But at least an announcement. And if somebody has a big issue they want to talk about, here's a chance. They were finishing up. If you have any other thoughts, follow up with me and attend the next meeting, kind of thing.
I have a quick question about the public comment piece. So we're going to send it out to all the boards, commissions, and committees for feedback. What if we modeled after the DCR public access plan, where they go to the public for a comment? What if we had that, incorporate that into our master plan process and actually have a public comment process where we issue it out and ask the public to provide feedback? Now, I don't want to open cans of worms that could be, detrimental to the process, but it is one more step of incorporating feedback that might be useful. And, a thing to say that we did open it up to public comment, and, sorry you didn't get to see that, but we tried.
How would that work? We'd have send it out and then have a meeting at some point that is open to the public to.
Maybe, or just like, what about public comments received via a website or an email, like DCR is doing as a follow-up to their listening session? So they're saying, if you have comments to this plan, just send us an email via here. I don't know if there's pros and cons. You guys have more experience with some of this than I do, but it might be one way to just get that last bit of feedback, or it might be a way to stop the plan completely. I hope not.
I think it's an interesting idea. Again, particularly if it's send written comments in, then we discuss it at a meeting, and it's a public meeting. So somebody who feels like they want to follow up verbally with us at a meeting would be fine as well. I think again, it's an effort to be inclusive, transparent, etc. Even though again, we'll certainly get people who say I didn't know anything about it, but gives us yet another point to make to say we've worked pretty hard at soliciting public input on this and being transparent about it.
And I'm curious about those that have been involved with the town for a long period of time. Like, do you think that would be a showstopper in any way? Would there be anything that would prevent us from moving forward?
No,
comment?
We would control that basically in terms of deciding what we changed or not.
Yeah.
And somebody could get upset and eventually I presume we would take this to town meeting and say, here it is, and the planning board accepts it. And town meeting doesn't have to vote on anything with it, it's my understanding. So, somebody might be unhappy, but we've listened and considered it, and for whatever reason decided not to include that particular issue. So,
certainly belts and suspenders in that way.
Yeah. Worth considering, certainly. Not until we get a draft, but sounds interesting.
No, I think that's a good idea.
I don't know if that was done in the previous plan, but I also agree with you, Kat. I think it's a good idea.
So we have only one now additional chapter, Julie's chapter. Is that all we've got now remaining?
Yeah, I still have some, I have to drop the data in to mine. Now that I have all the goals, I can kind of re-gear that chapter towards
Yeah, me too.
the goals.
Good.
So I have some updating to do. How's everybody else doing? Good.
Oh, no, I'm redlining our current document. I'm a little behind where I said I would be, but I think once we finalize the document that I'll be updating, it will be in good position for next time.
Great. Very good. Do I have a motion to accept the minutes from August 18th, 2021?
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
And a roll call vote. Signs,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Marklear,
You,
Sorry, yes.
Demuria,
I'm ex officio, so I don't think I get to vote.
oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Stivers,
Yes.
Savidovich,
Yes.
Glazemitsky,
Yes.
and Brashia.
Yes.
And how are you, Gina?
I know, no baby yet.
We need the Gina report here. Come on.
I'm good. I'm good. It just, the pregnancy in general, I think, is probably 6 to 8 weeks too long for mom, but we're getting there. We're getting there. A couple weeks left.
No.
Well,
Due on the 13th, so
But the
Good
good
luck.
news is that the only approved excuse for missing a master plan committee meeting is childbirth. So
Yeah,
you're in
we
good shape.
totally are with you. We are
Yeah,
supporting.
so
I guess I'm never missing a
not
meeting.
expecting to be there,
Poor Jeff.
but we're good.
Yeah.
We're good. Just getting to the end, hanging in there.
Great.
I just want to comment, that is the largest water bottle I've ever seen in my life. Show it.
64 ounce. Whoa.
Good.
I
fire.
I drink probably 3 or 4 of these a day.
That's great.
Work your biceps out at the same
Oh,
time.
Your baby appreciates it. Yeah. Yeah.
guys, he carries the one around that's literally like
Very nice.
military issue, like you're in the desert type
He's
thing.
used for self-defense too, so
I
multi-
know, it's-
I like it.
Anti-mugging device.
It's awesome, but yeah, no, we're good. Couple more weeks. I'll let you
Great.
guys know when the arrival happens.
Great.
Hope it goes well.
Thank you. Me too.
So the next proposed meeting date is October 20th. And we had been meeting at 7:30 because I was working till 7, but I have now retired. So if you'd rather come earlier, have an earlier meeting,
Congratulations.
that's fine with me.
Congrats.
Maybe 7.
Yeah.
7?
October 20 works great for me. And I don't see an invite though in my calendar. Is it because I didn't accept it or did I do something?
So I send the invite after I get the room confirmed, and you can't
Or,
get a
yeah,
room
absolutely.
more than 30 days in advance.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And is this going to be virtual or in person based on the recent release of maybe you're virtual, maybe you're not?
Probably virtual. I mean, we certainly have the option of doing virtual. The last night recommendation, the selectman was that for small committees where you don't expect a crowd, and you want to meet in person, and you can keep the Board of Health recommended separation distance of 6 feet and wear masks, you can meet in person.
But you have to be approved by Mark Purple.
Yeah, town administrator. So, I
But
mean,
with Sarah being her current employment status and location, I think we should stay virtual to have her involved.
yeah, and
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
for
I'm
convenience,
pointing to you because you're over there to me.
I appreciate it.
I'd vote for virtual too.
Me too. It's easier. Okay, great. Thank you.
Awesome. And I see Lisa's here with us as well. Any thoughts? I think she's probably just listening. Yeah.
And Mimi, there was a person in the attendees. Oh, she left. Never mind.
Yes, she left.
We had an audience?
Yes,
We
did.
did. One
was it?
person. Marcy Jones.
Yes,
That's what the name said.
advisory committee member.
And isn't that Kevin Miller's wife?
That's correct.
Nice.
Did we
Right.
cut you off, Lisa? I'm sorry.
Nope, it was fine.
And so we may, as of last night's Board of Selectmen's meeting, we may have a November 1st special town meeting. That I guess will be decided in October, Sam?
October 5th. I think we're waiting for more Board of Health data.
And the Board of Health is actually meeting, I believe, the 29th. So they'll have additional information then as well.
Right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
I second.
Second, and a roll call vote, Signs,
Yes.
McKee,
Yes.
Marklear,
Yes.
Stivers,
Yes.
Savidovich,
Yes.
Glazemitsky,
Yes.
and Braccio.
Yes.